Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Florence Hudson, Executive Director of the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub and founder of the National Student Data Corps. You're in the right place if you're here for the Data and Health Career Panel, September 29th, 2023, and we will begin at 3 p.m. Eastern Time in just a couple of minutes. Hello, everybody, and welcome. You're in the right place if you're here for the National Student Data Corps Data and Health Career Panel, and we'll just be starting in a minute. We're waiting for a few more people who are waiting to get in to join us. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So welcome everybody to the National Student Data Corps Data and Health Career Panel. Today is September 29th, 2023, and we're delighted to have you joining us. My name is Florence Hudson. I'm the Executive Director for the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub and founder of the National Student Data Corps. We're joined today by my co-moderator, Emily Rothenberg, who is the National Student Data Corps Program Manager, and our esteemed panelists, which we're super excited to have with us today. Carsten Eickhoff from the University of Tübingen. Before that, he was at Brown University in Rhode Island, the US. Kerrie Holley is actually making a virtual cameo appearance. He and I worked together at IBM years ago. Now he's at Google Cloud, and he created a little video for us, which is very intriguing and interesting. Live, as well as Carsten, we have Johnston, and we're delighted that Joe could be with us from Dimensional Insight. And then Manish Mathur is going to be joining us from Google as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I'd like to review the agenda now. So a little bit about the National Student Data Corps history. So the National Student Data Corps was first envisioned in 2020 during the pandemic. So everything we do is virtual by design and now on purpose. And what we wanted to do is be able to bring data science awareness and education to students and learners, first in the Northeast US, and actually now it's across the country and around the world, students and learners that don't have access to data science education, data science career knowledge, people they can talk to about what is it like to work in the field of data science. And so we created first a Northeast Student Data Corps. Then it quickly grew, and our first event was in February 2021, and over 700 people registered. We had to get a Zoom webinar license. That's why we have it now, because we had a license and only would allow 100. And so now we have this National Student Data Corps that has over 4,000 people. Emily will give you more information around the world. So she's going to give you more information about that. Then we're going to have our panel discussion with our esteemed panelists. And then Emily is going to go over some of the resources and opportunities that we can share from the Northeast Big Data Hub and National Student Data Corps, learning, researching, educating, career, student challenge updates. Ooh, brand new news. They just found out yesterday and today that they won the challenges. So we're going to announce those today. And then talk about some of our COVID Information Commons programs, and then have an open Q&A. So Emily, if I could pass it over to you, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Florence. And again, thank you all for joining us today. I will begin by reviewing the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub and some of its premier programs. So the Hub is a collaboration network whose role is to fuel data science innovation through diverse and inclusive partnerships with a special focus on underserved communities, whether that be through academia, industry, nonprofit, government, or other sectors. These partnerships span not only across the country, but around the world. And on our About page, which you can see a piece of it here, you can see some of the activities, events, and resources that we host in each of our 4 focus areas: education and data literacy, health, urban to rural communities, and responsible data science, including security, privacy, and ethics. Now, the NSDC is the premier program under the education and data literacy focus area, along with other free, open, and available resources. But we also have a variety of resources and opportunities within the health focus area, including the COVID Information Commons portal, researcher working groups, lightning talks, and more that we will be sharing with you on today's call. And the NSDC is a community-developed initiative created to foster a diverse and welcoming data science community for learners of all ages, all backgrounds, and all skill levels. The NSDC began back in 2020 with a call for a founding committee, which attracted 24 individuals from 19 organizations across the Northeast region. The founding committee included students, researchers, professors, industry members, and nonprofit members who make up 3 teams to lead our efforts: the content and pedagogy team, the peer instructor and mentoring team, and the outreach team. And together, these teams have cultivated a community of diverse insights and perspectives to develop the NSDC portal and community. And since the inception of the NSDC, it has grown tremendously. Originally branded as the Northeast Student Data Corps, we quickly had to be rebranded as the National Student Data Corps with an international reach. The NSDC now has over 4,400 members since starting from 0 in February 2021. These members come from over 613 institutions and span the United States and 28 additional countries, as you can see here on the global map. We also ensure that all of our provided resources, events, and programs are virtually accessible to all due to the diverse nature of this community. So now I am very happy to pass the virtual microphone back over to Florence, our moderator for today's panel discussion, to introduce our panelists and begin our insightful conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us. So our 4 panelists today are Carsten Eickhoff, a professor at University of Tübingen in Germany, formerly at Brown University in Rhode Island in the US. Kerrie, who is a director for Google Cloud Healthcare and Life Sciences Industry Solutions. He's making a video cameo appearance. Johnston, a software engineer at Dimensional Insight, and Manish, the Chief Technology Officer and Director for Google Healthcare and Life Sciences. And we're so delighted you're all joining us today. What we're going to do now is turn off the slides so we can see your faces, and then we can get started. So first, I'd like to ask each of you, and we'll ask the 3 panelists to answer each question, and I'll tell you what order so we don't have to guess who's next. So first, we'd like to start with Carsten. Please tell us about your data and health science journey and how you use data in the field of health.
Yeah, hey, glad to be here. So I think my journey was standard in some ways, in that I went to college, studied computer science, did a master's in actually AI. They had a program like that before, and did my PhD and postdoc, became faculty, did a lot of cool research work, all of that. So that's pretty standard, right? So that's very much the vanilla way. What's not so vanilla maybe is that I grew up on a little farm in the middle of nowhere. Nobody in my family had ever studied, so that was somewhat far away from some of these resources, right? And maybe the other thing that wasn't so standard on my journey there was that I spread out things over 5-6 different countries. So I started out growing up in Germany, went to the UK for a while, did my PhD in the Netherlands. We went to Switzerland for a moment. I lived on both US coasts before now, then somehow closing the geographic circle and moving back to Europe. So that was very exciting, and you get exposed to lots of different ways of doing things, both for me as a teacher, but also as a researcher. And then really what I do, so I specialize in natural language processing. So I like to compute with mostly language resources, mostly spoken, mostly written language, some of it spoken. So many of you will have, probably all of you will have seen ChatGPT and friends, right? So these models are what we use and develop day to day. And really where we try to bring this to bear on health data is try to use all of this published information. So these might be journal articles that are out there. These might be historic patient records. All of this knowledge that's circulating around, can we bring this to bear for every patient at every diagnostic decision? So can we make every physician aware of all of this knowledge, and hopefully in such a way that they don't waste much?
That's so interesting, Carsten. And what a hot topic these days, right? So we're going to have another question related to that. So thank you very much for that. Next, I'd like to welcome Manish. Manish, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No, definitely. This is my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, in then like 3 or 4 minutes, tell us about your data and health science journey and how you use data, or maybe how you help others use data in the field of health.
Definitely. So I've been in, my whole career has been in the intersection of healthcare and technology. I started my career after my MBA in more of a consulting world. I was with PwC, then I was with Deloitte, and then I joined the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, New Mexico. So they hold 5 plants at CSC. So I joined Blue Cross Blue Shield. Then I moved to Walgreens. I was at American Medical Association. And before joining Google, I was with Johnston & Johnston. And what I have seen across different stakeholders of healthcare, right, especially in US health system, how payers deal with health, how providers deal with health, how manufacturers, how pharmaceuticals. So I have a very comprehensive, I would say, end-to-end understanding of how healthcare works and how what are the challenges, right? I mean, it's so siloed. Understanding health of a patient is very much dependent on the holistic view of the patient, not from the lens of an insurance company, not from a lens of a pure hospital system, not from a lens of a pharmaceutical, although they all are very key for the health of a patient. But when it comes to care, it should be about holistic. At Google, what we are trying to do is really bring these stakeholders together. So as a director and CTO for healthcare and life sciences, when I go to different customers, which are payers, providers, life sciences, I try to advise them as they're building their strategy on healthcare. How can they really approach a patient from a holistic patient perspective rather than within the silo of their lens? And this is a very, very interesting journey which Google is at. So Google, we are very clear that we don't want to hold the patient's data. We will never hold anybody's data, but we will provide AI insight and tools with cloud computing, the power to understand how the data can be leveraged, the power of building algorithms on top of the data so that you can identify different next best action for the patient. We're working with, for example, Mayo Clinic, what we call it, assisting physicians to understanding and identifying certain cancer types. We are working with the pharma companies like Johnson & Johnson or GSK to accelerate drug development cycles. We are working with different providers like United Healthcare or Blue Cross of California to how to really accelerate or claims processing. But at the end of it, all of these stakeholders are looking at the holistic view of the patient. How do I really make sure that if I'm developing a drug, it is not causing side effects which might be harmful for that unique patient? But how do I make sure that the payer understand, the provider understand, and they can have a built-in engine to say, do not provide this drug to that patient? So that's where my journey is. Very excited to be here. Obviously, Gen AI is the hottest topic, so everybody wants to talk about it. But it is a game changing what we are seeing. It is like internet when it came in 2000s. This is how we see that Gen AI is going to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that it's like the earth is moving, right? And it's not
Right.
just natural hazards and disasters. So thank you so much for that. That was very comprehensive. I'll just mention a couple things I can talk about later if we have time that's related to what you've all been talking about. One is that the National Science Foundation just announced a project called the Prototype Open Knowledge Network. And it's about connecting all the domains of knowledge in the United States on an open knowledge network. And actually at Columbia, we're a co-PI on what's called Educate, which will be the education gateway to teach people how to use these knowledge networks and knowledge graphs. So that's an interesting concept we should talk about. We're looking for more, partners on that. And then next week, I'll be speaking at a National Cancer Institute, NIH, National Institutes of Health Summit, a virtual human global summit, talking about digital twins. I'm so excited. So there's so much new stuff going on in this space. I think we're at a really cool renaissance where the things we've been knowing and talking about for a while, like AI, machine learning, deep QA, whatever, now they're real. And now we can actually do something with them and make real differences. So thank you so much. Joe, let's go over. Let's go over to you. I was so delighted. Joe and I met, I think, through HIMSS, right?
Yes, that's right.
The Healthcare Information Management Systems Society. And so we're so delighted you can join us and you bring yet another perspective, so tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got into your data and health science journey and how you use data in the field of health.
Yeah, so I actually started in physics. I did my undergrad and PhD in physics and really enjoyed data analysis and, being able to really dig into the data and try to understand what was going on a deeper level. And I really enjoyed being able to communicate the aspect of, figuring out the best way to present data and, make a useful decision from it. So when I was graduating, I was looking to move into something where I could, have the sort of immediate real world impacts. And that brought me to Dimensional Insight, where we're a data analytics company with a large focus on healthcare. And I work as a front-end software engineer, so I get to spend a lot of time working on, figuring out how we can help customers to best display their data, as well as helping them to dig into their data. That our goal is, we want someone to be able to, look at a macro level and understand broad picture what's happening, but also dig in and look at specific cases and really get that underlying understanding of what's going on. And just making that available to anyone with the organization, from doctors and nurses making specific decisions up to admin making broad decisions. We just want everybody to be working from the same data and being able to make the most impactful decisions from it. I think it's an area that's really exciting. Super excited to be able to working in something with impacts like this, and excited to talk about it more today.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And you're all role models in different ways. So, Joe, I have to give you a lot of credit. Not every physicist looks at the world as, how can I explain this to everybody else in a simple way? So it's really impressive that you want to do that. Usually I ask, were you an applied physicist or a theoretical physicist? Because you can kind of tell that way. But it sounds like you're who you are no matter what, that you want to be able to share this and explain it to people, which is a beautiful thing. And I think that's a really important part that we try to deliver in data science education is, what does the visualization look like? What are people going to think when they look at this? Are they understanding it? And you can dive like a submarine or fly like a butterfly, right? And we each have a different role: data engineers, data analysts. Very exciting. So that was really interesting. I get so excited when I listen to y'all. So now let's go to the next one. And Manish, you'll be the first one to answer this. So if you could tell us, how do leaders and learners ensure they're using data responsibly for our patients, hospitals, and healthcare workers?
Right. I think as the AI is becoming more useful and it's getting very ingrained in everything what we do, responsible AI is top of the mind for Google and for me and a lot of leaders like me. We don't want to use data in a harmful way. At Google, we have the AI principles, which we follow very strictly. Which is all about how do you use the data responsibly? How do you make sure that it is not only responsible for the patient you're caring for, but also responsible for the society, for the greater good of humanity? And the power of AI is it's very powerful. So you can definitely leverage it for not so good reasons. Um, the how do you manifest it, right? I mean, that is the biggest challenge. That how do you make sure that this is something which is ingrained as new companies are coming up, as new startups are coming up? How do you put guardrails and boundaries behind it? Um, it is it is so powerful, right? Especially with Gen AI, what we are seeing is that it can very easily create biases. It basically uses the data which is available on public domains, and it's very easy for the for it to pick up signals which are biased. It's very easy to hallucinate on those biases, and you have to put those and controls in place. And sometimes you have to compromise on the speed to make sure that you are managing those biases and not manifesting the AI model, which keeps learning on the data. And at some point, these models becomes very hard to control because it's continuously picking on the data which it's finding on public domains, private domains, and whatever. Uh, what I always try to say to my peers, to my teams, is let's not compromise on testing. We have panels of physicians, nurses, who are constantly looking the behavior of the model. The prompt engineering, especially in Gen AI field, is becoming very critical. That how you can manage the prompt so that it um, doesn't create biases. But it's an evolving field. I think there is no yes or no answer on how do you really manage the biases, how do you really manage the hallucination of the models, and we all are learning together. So the only thing which I would say is that uh, it's better to compromise speed rather than uh, making the model more less effective, because it can create multiple effects which you don't want to create. Also, I think at a national front, there is a lot of discussion about it. Europe is much ahead in terms of how to build certain parameters, how to create certain regulations to avoid those biases. I think US, we have to catch up pretty quickly. APAC, we haven't seen these kind of discussions yet, but I think at a national level, at the government level, there has to be certain initiatives to restrict these biases.
I totally agree. And I'm impressed that you said that you actually have some AI rules at Google. And actually, if you have a link for that and you want to, put it in the Q&A, or Emily, there's some way that he can chat it to us, we could actually add that to the chat.
Definitely,
That would be
definitely.
great. Thank you. Very good. And so now, Joe, I would love you to answer this question. How do leaders and learners ensure they're using data responsibly for our patients, hospitals, and healthcare workers? And you probably have to do this all the time with your clients.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so there's kind of two main things that I think about. So one is data collection and use, that we want to make sure when we're collecting data, we're collecting the right data and we're collecting in a patient-centric way. And then we want to make sure we're getting full use out of it so we can make effective decisions from that. So one example of this is readmit rates is a measure that we'll often look at, where if you can decrease readmit rates, that's a good way to improve patient outcomes. And when you're trying to do that, there's sort of two ways you could go about it. One is you could look sort of broad scale, just look at the data, who's coming back, do we see anything in there that indicates what might have gone wrong? Is there anything we can do? And then another option is to, when someone comes back, have a doctor talk to that patient and say, what went wrong? Like, where could we have supported you? Like, what things could we do differently to avoid having this sort of thing happen? So when we're able to do that and collect that sort of full set of data that's useful, we can then really dig into it and, make the best broad decisions possible in order to improve patient outcomes. And then the other bit that we're always thinking about is data security, which, that's obviously important. That's always something we're thinking about in any sort of data analytics tool. But especially in healthcare, it's a lot of trust when patients share their data. So one, we want to make sure that patients can trust their doctors, trust their providers, trust that their data is being handled effectively and properly. And then second, there's really powerful things that we can do by having these large amounts of data from patients. And by building that trust and being able to collect that, there's really powerful improvements that can be made.
That was so impressive from multiple perspectives. The one that I maybe love the most, that touched my heart, is, we talk about humans in the loop with AI, but you're really talking about humans talking to the patients and getting information from other humans, not just the humans checking what the algorithm did. And that's really heartening, that's how you look at it. And that's one of the things I think we really have to remember with some of these new tools. We think, oh, we're going to automate all this stuff, and then we'll all just become little potato heads. No. They're really humans in the loop, and we have to figure out how can we use the data responsibly? How can we really help what's going on? So that was very impressive. I really appreciate that, Joe. And now, Carsten, you get to teach people all the time because you're at a university and you're doing research.
That's right. I think Manish already touched upon this point, right? Depending on where in the world we are located, we might already have tighter or looser or no guardrails at all that help us deal with privacy. So GDPR, for example, over in Europe, but also increasingly with smart, generative, autonomous software that does interesting things for us that was previously a territory of humans making decisions, and now part of the decision, or all of the decision, might now be automated. And I think really, so one of the big things for us, for example, is in the German context, we have what's called the Medical Informatics Initiative, which brings together all academic medical centers, really with this vision of some of these centers are small and others are in major cities, have much larger cohorts. Now, what we want to do is collect one national cohort. So there's a network between all of those 40 sites across the country, so that basically no matter where you are, even if you're not affiliated with any of these, you can do research on all of that data. And in order to do that, of course, you have to be very careful both with privacy as well as with any form of automation that you roll out. So both in that context, as well as for smaller, maybe local research projects, if we do anything in the precision medicine world, I think the number one priority is just involve your stakeholders, keep all these different perspectives in the loop. So for us, this typically means these are data protection officers. This is IT security, because of course, no hospital wants a breach where PHI, where confidential information gets leaked. But this is also patient representatives, right? So people who are fighting cancer or have been fighting cancer, who are in the same situation as the people whose data we are hopefully responsibly treating, and who chime in and to say, look, for me as a patient, I would not have enjoyed my data being treated in this way, or I really appreciate that you guys deal with it in this other way, right? And then of course, the other big group are clinicians and are us engineers, data scientists, machine learners. So, and really, I think not just does such a diverse mix give you a more interesting cocktail of ideas and of products that you'll develop, but also it fends off some of the things that might be legal, but not ethical.
That is so insightful. We sometimes use the term patient advocates. Is a patient representative like a legal thing, or is it similar?
No, that's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Great. Oh, that's very interesting. And it's great. Once again, you're listening to the humans. You're not just saying, okay, bring, there's this great network and algorithm. You're set. And that is a really important message in all of the use of this technology, I think. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. So now we'd like to go on to our next question. And Joe, you're the first seat this time. And so what resources or experiences were the most helpful to your career in data and health science? Are there any organizations or programs that you'd like to mention that could help the audience that maybe they can get engaged with?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that was the most helpful for me was just being able to talk to other people in the fields and talk to people doing different things in the fields, or learn about the breadth of opportunities and options that are out there. And the specific resource I want to call out is HIMSS, where you and I connected. It's the Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society. And they have some great resources, both for learning, lots of great talks on there, lots of great information, great resources for career planning. And they have a conference every year, which was an amazing place to hear some really interesting talks about how folks are using AI, like a whole bunch of different case studies of what people are doing in the field, and just being able to walk around the floor and talk to people working in the industry and talk to the people doing very specific, interesting things. So yeah, I would highly recommend folks look into that.
I agree. That is how we met. So we condone going to HIMSS, connecting with HIMSS, great networking opportunity. I think before COVID, they used to get like 40,000 people to go. It's really a big deal. Then it went down. I think now it's around 25 or 30. It's huge. And I think they even have some around the country. I think I was involved in one in South America, like virtually. So it's really exciting. Thank you for mentioning that, Joe. That's a great one. And so now, Carsten.
Yeah. So I had a pivotal experience during my master's, actually. So I studied, my undergrad was just vanilla computer science. And my plan was pretty clear: become a software engineer, do something like that. That's pretty cool. I really liked algorithms. So I was very clear on that. And all I wanted to do was spend a year abroad, study, improve my English, and then go, well, probably to Germany, be a software engineer. And during my undergrad, I was at a small local college, so I didn't really have any major exposure to research, and certainly not AI or any of that future tech back then. And really during the master's, I got introduced to all of this Bayesian statistics, EM algorithm, all of that cool stuff. And this really felt like magic to me. So even though I, of course, intellectually understood how it worked, it still to this day hasn't lost its charm of doing things that are somehow magical and that are somehow the ghost in the machine in some ways, right? So I thought, hey, why not give this research thing a shot and try whether I can do this? And it turns out that I can do it, and that it's really fun, and that has really completely turned around the way that I live, that I do things. I met my wife in this on this journey, right? So this has really changed a lot for me. And was completely off my plan, I guess. And really nowadays, in terms of resources, I think the big deal is obviously the internet, right? So I watch YouTube videos all the time. If a paper is particularly dense and I really don't have the time to work my way through the math, right, I'll watch a very smart grad student explain it to me, just because it's so much more efficient, right? So there's so many cool channels and very smart people out there that talk you through the stuff that takes a moment to wrap your head around. So, yeah.
That's all great advice. And actually, on that note, Emily is going to be talking about our video library. And that's what we do. We take really dry PowerPoint slides out of a place that we really respect in GitHub that we actually manage now. IBM originally created OpenDS, Open Data Science for All. And we have our grad students record them in 15-minute chunks. So not only do you not have to try to learn the whole thing at once, you get to kind of, learn it in stages or go back and listen to that part of it 3 times, right? And so I think that is great. And so she's going to share some of that cute little flashcard series she has going on. So we're trying to leverage those resources in that way. So thank you for mentioning that, Carsten. And also, sometimes when something looks really cool, go for it, right? Go learn more about it. Now there's so much more data you can use as a researcher. You can get your fingers on so many things. There's so much more you can do with it with new data science tools. That's really very, very inspiring to hear that. So Manish, over to you. What resources or experience were most helpful to your career in data and health science, and any organizations or programs you'd like to mention and recommend to the audience?
Right. I mean, I think constant learning is very important, and things are changing so fast and so quickly that you can never catch up. That's what I feel. So constant learning from different resources, right? I mean, I think learning is a gift, feedback is a gift, but I think if you keep those principles in mind, there is no dearth of resources, right? I mean, there is overflow of resources, but YouTube is a great. I mean, Google has some really good learning channels, YouTube being one. Also, if you talk about models, if you talk about Gen AI, Google has published the whole Gen AI series as a free training tool. So if you're interested in that, you guys can just go to Gen AI, Google, and there's a lot of free tools available to start your journey. We offer certificates. We offer all kind of tools for people to understand new capabilities in AI, the development in AI. Healthcare is unique on its own. I think my journey with healthcare was listening to people, listening to patients, listening to nurses, listening to physicians, and understanding what challenges they go through. Right. I mean, I started my healthcare journey when I was at American Medical Association, and it was all about how do you provide electronic medical record systems to physicians and small practices and large practices. And when you understand that challenges, right? I mean, it's like how hard it can be. You just install a EMR system, but these physicians are not used to it. They're looking at patients. They're not looking to type things. So those are different types of challenges, which is very unique to healthcare, I would say. Then there is a trust issue. Then there is a um, patient management issue. There is a lot of issues around what I call it social determinants of health. I was listening to someone recently. They talked about that 80% of an outcome of a patient health is dependent on social determinants. And how do you bring all that, as I was talking earlier, into a patient's holistic care? Those are the type of things I would encourage people to understand and learn and find resources, because those are the trends, right? I mean, AI model can be as good as it is, but a patient is unique as a one individual patient, and they might have their individual journey, which is very different than somebody else's journey. So those are some of the unique challenges within healthcare, which not apply to financial or maybe supply chain or some other industry. So I want people to encourage to find their own passion about healthcare, find their own path about healthcare solution, and find resources. I think there's so many resources to find that right resource and continue the journey.
That's all excellent advice. Once again, listen to the humans, listen to what the information is telling you. There's a program we've been involved in, and we've actually leveraged the National Student Data Corps content to populate a portal at the NIH AIM-AHEAD program, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning to advance health equity and researcher diversity. Very inspirational program. And so Emily actually leveraged the Learner Central material we have in the NSDC to put it right into that portal. And I would say, look for resources like that. Keep learning and looking, and that's great advice. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So the next question, Manish, you get to go next. You okay? Okay.
Sure.
Great. So what are the most common technical and or interpersonal skills or tools that you use in your roles?
I mean, I think for me, it's always been a listening to people. I'm at Google. We have a saying that everybody wants to lead, but the followers are more important sometimes. So listen and follow. Your idea might be 5% better, but from the other person, but that 5% of argument is not worth it. So if you are aligned with someone else, make sure you do that and provide those inputs. Um, those are some of the principles I always keep in mind, that it's not about always leading. It's about making someone else look good. It should be also a way to build your career, build your professional life, and continue learning, right? I mean, I think once you have that in your mindset, that no matter who you are talking to, no matter which group you're working with, um, make sure you listen and learn from them and apply that to your leadership principles. Those are some of the key things I keep in mind, and I think that has helped me grow in my career. And I think I can encourage everyone to make sure that they have that empathy with the patient, they have that empathy with the coworkers. So empathy, we sometimes lose that in corporate world. Keeping that in mind is also very important.
Totally agree. Thank you very much for sharing that. So now we have Carsten, if you could answer that question.
Yeah, happy to.
Great.
I really, Manish, I really like your answer there, and I think I'm going to one up you. So I think the skill that I'm probably using most in my line of work is asking dumb questions, right? So and I'm really saying dumb, right? So it's sometimes really I'm waiting for my grad students to finally give me the exasperated sigh and roll their eyes when they answer. But it's really worth it. And of course, listen, don't just ask dumb questions and then shut down. Because very often we're just so afraid there's this wall of math coming our way, right? Or this wall of plots or what have you, right? And we're so intimidated by that we're just sitting there nodding like robots. And really everyone is laboring on the same question in their minds, right? So this doesn't make any sense to me. It's this weird, right? Why isn't this weird? But everyone else is nodding, so I should probably not ask. And really asking these very basic questions, that's often where you strike gold, where suddenly everyone goes like, oh yeah, this doesn't make any sense, and we're all way out of whack here. So I think that's really important. So just be brave, question things. And I think in terms of hard skills, so in my line of work, it's linear algebra, right? So it's really, don't be afraid of the math, do the math. It really helps you, right? So anything machine learning, it's not fun if you don't understand what's happening under the hood.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily as useful if you don't know what's really going on under the hood. I
Yeah.
know when I was doing consulting at a few years ago, and I was with the CEO and his team, and I said, if they tell you it's a black box, don't say, okay, ask them how they're making decisions. What information are they using? What are they not using? What do they do if this happens? I was speaking with somebody one time, we were on a panel together at the supercomputing conference, and that person said, well, we create the machine learning model and we lock it in. I was like, oh, really? And I didn't want to call them out on the panel. So I was like, can we talk outside? So I was like, why do you say that? And it was interesting. They were working in a high energy physics environment where they kind of think they know what their atoms and stuff are doing. So when they figured it out, they felt like they had to lock it in. But when you're dealing with humans and new information that's coming out all the time, you really can't do that. So that was a situation where I'm with this other expert from a very large lab that everybody would know. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. So I had to find a polite way to say that in front of everybody, that there are different ways to look at that, depends on the environment. But questioning is really important, right? Because if everybody left thinking, oh my gosh, I'll just do it once, then I'm set, that would not be good for a lot of situations, right? So thank you for saying that, Carsten. Okay, Joe, now we'd like to hear from you. What are some of the most common technical interpersonal skills or tools that you use?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ones for me has sort of being able to communicate in the right mode for an audience. Like you want to be able to communicate something at a technical level, but also communicate it at a broader level that will, work for the person that you're talking to. And yeah, I think it's the kind of thing like you need to pick the right data to show, you need to pick the right thing to analyze, you need to, be presenting it well, but it really comes down to that final connection of being able to really clearly communicate what you're doing and what the meaning of that is. And then I think the other skill I'll mention is just teamwork. I think all the interesting problems are happening in big teams. Like if you want to work on something large and have an impact, then being able to work with a big team is one, the way to do that, and two, I think just a really exciting way to get to do some work in this field.
Excellent. I love it. Whenever you're talking, you talk about the humans. I really like that. The teamwork and the listening and the communicating, very full duplex, as we used to say in the old days, which is great. So you listen and you talk, right? Information out, information in, both. That's great. And Manish, I just actually answered a question in the Q&A that was about what you were talking about. I hope I did it correctly. The question was, what's, Gen AI? And so I put Gen AI or generative AI, and I put a link. If you look in the Q&A, see if I put the right link in there, please. To make sure I'm not messing up on you.
Oh, is it on the chat?
It's in the Q&A box. If you go in the Q&A box, okay. Go in the Q&A box, and then you can look at answered. There's open, and then there's answered. If you can take a look to make sure I did what you were hoping that we would do.
Right.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, and you can change that or answer it differently if you want. So now what we'd like to do is go to the next question. And first, I believe we're going to be having Kerrie's video, but the question is, how do you expect the data science and health fields to innovate and adapt over the coming years, considering the expansion of generative AI tools and large language models? And now a cameo appearance by Kerrie Holley, and we're going to show the video, and you should be able to hear it. We practiced it before we got started.
Yes, does everyone see that video?
Yes, we do.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for having me. Apologies that I could not be in person and we're doing this virtually, but I just had to weigh in on this really significant question on the impact that large language models and generative AI will have on the fields of data science and research science. I can tell you that the effects will be transformative, they will be significant, and we're going to see changes to the roles. We're going to see new research emerge. And one of the aspects that large language models have is this aspect we call emergent. And because it's an emergent capability, we're not going to be able to today predict all of what that is for tomorrow, but we know it's going to happen. We know that new data science tools and techniques will be developed to specifically leverage large language models and generative AI. These techniques and these methods will be around data cleansing, data preparation, analysis, and even visualization. We also know that knowledge workers will have what many describe as a co-pilot. And these co-pilots will be for all fields, whether it's finance, accounting, medicine, healthcare, manufacturing, IT workers, and of course, software engineers and data scientists. We're seeing it today with software engineers who are using large language models to generate code, where they use the model to generate some of the more typical but non-nuanced aspects of code. And they will focus on the more difficult, nuanced sort of new things that can't be or haven't been solved or seen with a large language model. So co-pilots is something that data scientists will have in their hip pocket as well. These co-pilots will help data scientists do a lot of the work that is mundane, whether that's around data preparation, whether that's around data cleansing, analysis. That will be something that the co-pilot can do using and based and fueled by a large language model. It'll allow data science to be freed up to do more complex and strategic work. We're also going to see new research fields emerge because of generative AI and large language models. It's going to be around AI ethics. It's going to be around large language model safety and trust, and of course, large language models for social good. Data scientists at Google are already exploring and working on these kinds of things. And we're also going to see that these technologies will enable new and innovative ways to collect, analyze, and interpret data. They'll lead to new insights and discoveries in many different fields. So exciting times ahead, and enjoy the rest of your panel. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kerrie. Oh, he can't hear me, but he'll hear us if he listens to the recording. So Kerrie has always been a pleasure to work with. He's always very insightful. He's a deep thinker, a good communicator. Joe, you're a type of person like you and the rest of you too, and Manish and Carsten. And Carsten, I saw you listening intently. We were talking about listening. So actually, we'd like you to comment on this question.
Yeah. So I tried not to go full hipster and claim that I liked language models before it was hot, but
you can say that. It's okay.
Who knows? So I think one, and I fully agree with what Kerrie said there. I think one of the very transformative different paradigms of working with large amounts of data are being unlocked by language models, and this is for us in sort of clinical decision support, for example, right? So previously we would say, okay, I have oodles and oodles of patient records, or I have millions of papers on PubMed, right? And now if I have a clinical question, I go and search through all of that. And this is painstaking, and this is months of work, because now I'm really curious about what does that drug do with that gene? What's a certain pathway, right? All of this. This is going to be a whole team's work for months. And I can do this, and we've been working for decades on technology to make that easier, right? So how to sort of empower search engines to make this faster. But really, this new paradigm that's coming out now is, let's make away with all of this and instead interrogate that large collection, right? So if we are good at pushing this collection into the language model, and hopefully all the knowledge of all these documents is somewhere encoded in the parameters of that model, I can now ask the model, hey model, tell me what's the current knowledge about this drug relative to that gene, right? What's going on? Or hey, tell me which of our patients right now, who of them are smokers and older than 50, right? So you rather than really trolling through this data and trying to find out, hopefully with tools, you would now have a conversation with a model and indirectly have a conversation with your data. And that's great, right? So you're abstracting away the need for some degree of data science skills, right? So now physicians who might not be trained in that way of statistic thinking maybe can very easily do this. And I think this is huge, and we'll see this a lot all over the place, not just in medicine, but I think there especially it's going to have a tremendous effect.
That's very interesting. So are you kind of agreeing with the co-pilot model, but you're just not using that term like the way Kerrie was talking about, or do you think it's a little bit different the way you're looking at it?
I think it's slightly different because I'm now not trying to generate something, right? So I'm not trying to write code, but really I'm looking for a concrete number or answer, right? And that would otherwise have been a very distributed effort. And now I'm looking for this interrogation, right? So this new way of analyzing my data by talking to a model.
Very interesting. Thank you. This is so insightful. Joe, you're next. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I think along similar lines, something that really excites me about it is being able to use large language models for summarizing and understanding electronic health records for patients. That can be a powerful tool both for understanding it better and for being a tool to catch mistakes or discrepancies or that sort of thing that can really improve effectiveness for what doctors are doing. And I think along the lines of the co-pilot model that Kerrie was talking about, I think something that's been very interesting to me is the way that these models aren't used in a vacuum. There's a doctor or there's someone using all of these models. And we saw this with classical machine learning algorithms, where there's some really interesting work in using those to be able to detect cancer or detect things like that. But folks have done research into incorporating the provider into that machine learning model and having it be able to pick out a diagnosis in some cases, in other cases say this is one where we need a human to look at this and see highly increased effectiveness from having both options built into the model. So in terms of adapting to AI, I think that's something that we'll see some interesting progression in ways to incorporate the person using this model into it.
Very interesting. It's wonderful how you're all so deep in this. And when did we start talking about generative AI, like in public? Not that long ago, even though we've been working on, deep QA, deep learning, we had all these terms for this stuff decades ago, right? That's how long I've been around. And now, it's ta-da, now we have this ChatGPT thing and these LLMs. Very interesting. So Manish, we'd like to hear from you now. Of course, we heard from Kerrie already, your colleague, and thank you so much again for joining us. But we'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh, no, I totally agree what Carsten said, what Joe said, and what Kerrie said. What the type of use cases we are seeing in Gen AI, definitely about predicting the next best action, but also some very, I would say, low-hanging fruits in terms of summarization. So all the research, which is kind of thousands of pages, if you can really ask a question about summarize, as Carsten was saying, right? Summarize me, how will this gene impact this molecule, right? How will this molecule impact my gene? If you can get like those thousands of pages of research to just summarize that in maybe 2 pages, that is so powerful for scientists. It saves tons of time. It saves humongous amount of wastage and gives you a very targeted view of things. That's on a larger scale, but on a very small scale, right? In physicians' practices, we have these summarizations, right? So we have patient physician notes, nurses notes, physiotherapist notes, and these notes just keep on building over a period of time. I was just looking at obviously all PHI and everything secured, but I was looking at a notes document of a patient staying over 10 days. And there were almost 200 pages of notes for that patient. He had a lot of comorbidities and whatnot. Um, I don't know if physicians or nurses have time to really read that 200 pages to effectively manage that patient. What if a Gen AI could summarize that in 5 bullets, that these are the key points? And if you need the detail, you can go to that detail section of that. But those are the type, I think another use cases which we are seeing is becoming very powerful. And just to add one more thing, right? Chatbots. Chatbots are again the third use case which we see a lot, where Gen AI could be very powerful, especially in user manuals. Like in J&J case, they have these robotic machines which do surgeries, and surgeons don't always go through those hundreds of pages of documentation to understand how this robotic works. But if they can summarize that for this patient, this is the right way to use this robotic machine. So those are the type of use cases I think are becoming very, very commonly used. And then I think they're really making an impact in healthcare and life sciences of how to use Gen AI to really develop these use cases. So this is again still very new topic. I would say 7 to 8 months, but the amount of traction and amount of difference it's going to make, I think it's going to be huge.
Totally agree. And you all bring up so much really important insight and information. And I think what you're also doing is, Carsten, what you said, ask dumb questions, or Manish, really listen, or, Joe, watching what's going on. Keep asking these questions, because you might see use of these tools and think, that's not right. Wait a second. Or the information that comes out and say, well, that's what it said. It's like, no. We're trying to teach humans that you're still responsible. You're the doctor, you're still responsible for the care. You're the student, you're still responsible for your paper to make sure that those facts are really facts. You're the lawyer. You probably heard about, one of the lawyers that, created a brief and a few of the references were fake, and the judge got them for it. So, the human is still responsible for this, and you have to question things. So I really appreciate that. And that's part of what we try to teach with responsible data science is you're still responsible for making sure that it's the right thing. And if you think you should question it, question it. Everybody else goes, that's what it said. Very scary. I was at an event, and there was a professor from a school, you would all know if I mentioned it, not any of yours, and said, well, before I was delivering my comments today, I went to ChatGPT and I felt so validated that it told me I was right. I was like, are you kidding me? You're a university professor at one of the top universities on the planet, and that's what you say out loud in front of a bunch of board members. So everyone be careful, So, make sure that if in your heart and your mind, you go, I don't know about that, make sure you question it. So very good advice. So this has been just excellent, but we're getting so many great questions from the audience. We might want to make sure we get to the Q&A. So Emily, I'd like to pass it over to you now. And panelists, don't go away, and people listening, don't go away. We're going to get to all your questions. And then Emily is going to take us through a few more resources.
Sure. Thank you, Florence, and thank you, panelists, all so much for that thoughtful discussion. A quick reminder to everyone who's listening in that the Q&A box is open. If you'd like to post your questions, we'll have a live Q&A session towards the end of the event. Before we get to that, I'll just quickly inform you of a few resources and events that we host here at the Hub. So if you're interested in collaborating, we recommend the COVID Information Commons, or CIC webinar series, where we bring together researchers studying wide-ranging aspects of the pandemic to share their research and answer questions from our community. The upcoming KIC webinar will be hosted Tuesday, October 10th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're interested in joining, we'll drop a link in the chat for you all to register. If you're looking to practice your data science skills, the NSDC hosts a data science projects program. In this program, we provide a Google Colab notebook with a full walkthrough of a project inside. We offer resources and mentorship calls along the way, and a certificate of completion at the end that you can share with your networks. We are currently hosting 2 projects, a Netflix data cleaning project and a sentiment analysis project on movie reviews, with many more to come. If you're looking to get real with the Hub, you can browse our research experience and leadership or REAL directory for opportunities, programs, and resource offerings for individuals of all professional and educational backgrounds to find the perfect opportunity for you. And I will touch on the Open DS for All call for participation in just a moment. If you're interested in learning and/or teaching, we invite you to visit the Learner Central and Video Library, where you can learn data science topics at your own pace, completely asynchronously, ranging from data science ethics to computer programming. Similarly, we have Educator Central, where you can find a vast range of resources to develop or broaden a data science program. You all may leverage the Career Central, where you will find the latest job listings, internship opportunities, scholarships, and practice materials for interviews. The NSDC chapter system is a community of support for learners of all ages, again, all backgrounds, that provides learning resources, mentorship, and career opportunities to launch your data science journeys. There are currently 31 chapters, institutional chapters spanning the US, India, and Bangladesh. So we welcome you to join or start a chapter in your own community. In the masterclass series, I will also mention in just a second. The NSDC, as Florence mentioned before, recently launched the flashcard video series, where you can watch short 2-minute videos that cover data science fundamentals. The first collection reviews what a data science pipeline is, why it's important to understand the steps of a data science pipeline, and how to evaluate for ethics and bias along the way. Future collections will include descriptive statistics, regression analysis, open knowledge networks, and more. And then in the last column on the right-hand side, for all of the aspiring researchers on today's call, the DSRR is a curated set of over 800 resources for learners, educators, and researchers, including both English and Spanish resources. You can search through this online repository to find textbooks, articles, videos, podcasts, games and challenges, and a whole lot more. We've also launched a call for manuscripts collaboration with Blockchain in Healthcare Today and Telehealth and Medicine Today. Members of the Hub and the NSDC have the opportunity to submit a research manuscript with the article processing charge waived. This opportunity is open to graduate students, educators, researchers, and data enthusiasts through December 2023 with rolling submissions. So you can feel free to use the links that will be dropped in the chat to learn more about each of these free, open, and accessible resources. And then I will also touch on the KIC working groups in a minute as well. So back to the OpenDS for All GitHub repository. This repository is a learning and professional development tool for data science students, leaders, and enthusiasts around the world. It includes hundreds of resources to support or broaden your data science knowledge. IBM recently transferred the management of this repository to the NEBD Hub, and now we are delighted to invite you all to become a part of its continued growth. If you would like to join this volunteer team, there are positions available on the Technical Steering Committee team, the Content Review team, and the Content Development team. Additional information about these positions can be found at the link on the bottom of this slide. We look forward to having you all join. The NSDC Masterclass video series highlights how data science skills are used in various fields. So in the first 2 episodes, which you can see on the right side of the screen, you can hear experts discuss the use of artificial intelligence in precision oncology. So that's from Ian Moorer, the CTO of Genome Oncology. And then you can also hear from Svetlana Volkova from Optima, discuss the future of generative artificial intelligence and large language models, similar to how we've been discussing today. Future videos will discuss data science in athletics, criminal justice, education, public policy, and more. And now I will pass it over to Lauren to discuss a bit more about the KIC student and research working groups.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, for inviting me to jump in. I want to plug to all of you for just a moment the KIC student and research working groups. These are 2 groups that we've founded through the COVID Information Commons, where we invite members of the community to contribute different research elements related to the COVID-19 pandemic and other pandemics broadly. For many of you here today, you may be interested in the student working group. We're next meeting this coming Friday, October 6th. We have over 115, I believe at this point, members from across the US and around the world who are interested in all the different aspects of COVID-19, from education to virology and so on. So we hope you'll join us. We have some new hands-on research projects that we're starting this fall semester, and I'll leave you with just that little teaser, but I hope you'll join us, and we provide the links in the chat as well, so you can sign up for our listserv and become a member of the working group team.
Thank you, Lauren. And then finally, before we get into the live Q&A session, we would like to officially announce the winners of the 2023 NSDC Data Science Symposium and KIC Student Paper Challenge. So we invited students from around the world to submit analytical and insightful research to our annual competition. And after a panel of anonymous judges reviewed those submissions, we officially have our winners. And a few of them should be on the call right now. So a big congratulations to our NSDC DSS winners. Our graduate cohort, in first place, we have Sol from the University of California, San Diego, who did research on a classification model for early signs of dementia. And our undergraduate and community college cohort, first place went to Lily, Julia, and Pranav from Vassar College on maternal hypertensive disorders. Very interesting research there as well. Second place went to Monica in University of Connecticut on moral patiency of social robots. Third place went to Jasmine from Seton Hall University on her project Tracing Intelligence Analysis. And then we have the KIC Student Paper Challenge winners as well. Our graduate cohort includes first place that went to Leisha from Columbia University about projecting the disease burden of type 2 diabetes in mainland China after removing zero COVID policy. Second place went to Putra Nagara at Boston University on clustering analysis of COVID-19 pandemic dynamics. Undergraduate community college cohort, first place, we saw Liam, Sydney, and Zaran from Colby College regarding the community pattern and rhetoric strategy through Twitter analysis. Second place went to Kiana at North Carolina A&T State University on a stacking ensemble approach, leveraging plasma, proteomics, metabolomics, and clinical data from COVID-19 severity prediction. And third place went to Dinesh at Yale University on their project Sufficient COVID-19 Quarantine and Testing on International Travelers from China. So a very big congratulations to all of the winners from the NEBD Hub team. We look forward to hearing you all share your research findings with our community in the near future. And additional challenges will be hosted in the new year. So all of those who are interested in participating in these challenges, keep an eye out for those announcements. Now we will begin our Q&A session. So I'll pass the virtual mic back over to Florence to begin those questions.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you for leading all those challenges and bringing in the judges and the mentors. And we want to thank the community of professors and professionals and grad students that actually helped us with the judging and mentoring and the students who participated. And we'll just say that we had students actually that asked us when we created the NSDC if we could create a platform for student researchers, because they don't feel like they're at the adult table, like they are not the researchers everyone is looking at, that they get invited to present. So we do these challenges, and then we have a student research symposium every year. And that's where they can present, and we're watching them, and they're the researchers. So we really encourage you to participate. We want you to grow your research skills now, because you are the future, and we want to help you help us in the future too. So now we'll go to the Q&A, and there's a lot of interesting questions. The first one that was asked, and if one of the speakers, one of the panelists wants to answer, let me know. Can AI make coding easier for physicians and allow them to focus on providing care? Are there any ethical security problems with implementing a system like this? Anybody? Manish, you were kind of talking about that a little bit, I think, and maybe actually.
Yeah, let me give my perspective. There's no right or wrong answer, right? I think if I understand correctly, right, the question is that how do you make sure that the physician is not leveraging the data for any other purposes, right? I mean, they are making sure that the care which is provided to the patient is optimum for that patient. And there is what we are seeing is, right, that as we are building models, right? So, for example, I was giving an earlier example of Mayo Clinic. We are leveraging lots of data for, let's say, a breast cancer, and applying that to give a recommendation to a physician. There's always physician in the loop, right? So they are making the final decision, but what the model, which is not biased, which is not tired, which is not hallucinating, it is giving a recommendation of likelihood of certain side effects, likelihood of what type of cancer, and all that. So I think there is a right mix of how do you leverage the model, how the physician leverages model, but ultimately it's a physician's decision. So what you talked about, Florence, right? Human in the loop, that is very critical, and especially in healthcare, right? That the physician is ultimately leveraging his knowledge, his biology, his way of capturing symptoms, which the model might not be looking at, to make the final decision.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah, and then Joe, maybe you have a little more information you can provide from another angle on this question when they talk about, the coding that because first when I read coding, what do I think? Python, but that's not what they meant, right? So maybe it's the codes that the doctor uses or something. You have any other comments?
Yeah, so I know, so there's some interesting research out there about, for example, being able to use language models and, audio processing for doctors sort of be able to take notes verbally while they're working, which is an excellent way to save time. And then, once you have your written record of what was discussed with the patient and maybe a summary of it from the language model, can be a much quicker way to, take everything that was discussed during an appointment and put it in an effective working data storage. So yeah, I think there's a lot of space here for doctors being able to use these tools to, save time and be more efficient with, that sort of coding.
Well, good. So hopefully we'll be able to keep helping them and helping them use the data the right way, making sure they're not getting the wrong data. But they're smart enough to think they're right. So I think they're going to make sure that they are. Another question is, this is really interesting. We'll stay on the healthcare route, and then there are some general questions about career and internships and stuff. One of our guests says, I'm currently working on a research paper on automating prior authorization of patient medical requests using machine learning. Can I get advice on what data is freely available, so that I can get started on this? Any comments on that?
I guess I can. I don't know about if there is a free data, right? I mean, prior auth is a big challenge. We as Google, we just rolled out a solution for that. So some of the things which payers look for is what are the trends within that region, right? So if there is a flu going on, they might not investigate the claim with that level of scrutiny if there is some public data which supports the claim for, right? So the public data which is generally available around flu trends, around a certain type of diseases which is prevalent in that area, those data sets are available. And that can be leveraged to supplement your claim. But the claim has certain key characteristics. We generally call it a 837 EDI record, which is submitted to a payer. And that record has some very specific requirements which is needed to pre-authorize a claim. So I don't know if there's free data available, but there's a lot of synthetic data available. So that is something can be leveraged. So a lot of organizations are developing synthetic data, which can be used to leverage if you're trying to build a project on prior auth.
That's very helpful. And I would suggest that Manish mentioned that Google has a prior auth offering. I think I just Googled it. It sounds funny. And it sounds like it was announced earlier this year. And there are a couple of other things that are out there about some providers, some payers that are doing some things. So I would suggest the person who asked the question or anyone else who's interested that if you look for, if you search on prior authorization AI or, generative AI, you might find some interesting things that can get you started. Oh, Joe, yes, what would you like to say?
Yeah, so another resource I want to call out is Kaggle competitions that I've done in the past. And that's an excellent way to get some really interesting data to work on and have a very specific goal and what you want to do with it. And I think that's a great place to get started in doing some of these smaller projects.
Excellent. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, we actually have a link to that in the NSDC if you're not able to find it. But if you just say Kaggle, I think it comes right up, right? It's a highly used source. That's great advice. Thank you. Sorry, are there any other hands up? I'm looking at the Q&A. I need to get like 5 screens. I still only have one. The next one, given the rise of generative AI or Gen AI as we call it, what challenges would be faced towards its mass adoption? I think while the LLMs or large language models will become smaller and potentially have a higher chinchilla score, which is great for dependency. However, given the privacy implications, not a lot of data will be publicly available. So how reliable would LLMs be in a critical area like healthcare? And I want to add a little something to that. There are public LLMs or LLMs where you ask your questions and everybody else gets to know what you're thinking already. And then there could be private large language models. Like when I talk, sometimes I would talk to clients when I was at IBM as an example. I would say it's like the internet versus a VPN. You're using the same technology, but one of them is very contained. And I know talking to some banks recently, they're saying, we'll have our own LLM. Thank you very much. We can't afford getting any of our data out there. So I would say the other piece of that is, could there be, private LLMs that you should be working with? And maybe there will be edicts related to that from some of the CISOs and CIOs I've been talking to, or what are some of the other implications? So any of the panelists, I see you nodding, Carsten.
Yeah. So I think on-premise or in some way closed access, right? So this might still be in your Azure or whatnot, AWS environment, right? But something where you can be sure that there's no leakage of potentially confidential information is one thing. And this sort of goes hand in hand with privacy guarantees of these models, right? So it's not just I didn't expose the model to any data that I don't want the world to see, but also really will the model spew that data out, right? Will the training data somehow come out of the model again, right? And this is a big problem because we really don't have guarantees for that. So we've seen a bunch of papers now that show interesting attacks where they're able to tickle out some of the training data again and find out that really the patient was Peter Miller and not some anonymous patient. The other big trend, and I think there's lots of interesting work going on there, is federated learning, right? So this idea that we are shipping around the model and the model gets to look at the data at each site, but the data is never leaving the site, right? And that's I think, another paradigm. If we couple that with privacy guarantees so that the model hopefully doesn't encode any of the raw data and the person 3 sites down the line from me can read that out there and figure something out about my patient population over here, then this is pretty huge. And this is one of these things that we, for example, try to use in this big networking of German university medical centers.
Very insightful. Yes, so this is going to keep evolving. Even though we've been doing deep learning and deep QA for decades, literally you can look it up, 50s and 60s. We were taught, well, I wasn't talking about it, I was a baby, but we're less than a baby. But, it has been around for many, many decades. Now it's the horse got out of the barn and now a lot of people have access to it. So there are more risks. It's not as contained as it was, right? A lot of people can use it. People can unwittingly give it information, so we have to find ways that we can protect. So it's very good that you're all thinking this way already. Any other comments on that from the panelists?
This is Manish. I will just add something to that, right? So yes, the race is on. We just saw AWS funding $4 billion for Anthropic. My view is these models are going to get very, very specialized. There is going to be large models like for search. So Google is coming up with Gemini. They are going to continue to evolve that. MedPalm is already out there. So there would be one landscape where there's very large models which are general purposes. Then there would be a very specific use case based models. And I think this there are so many startups from Google itself. There's so many people have left and started their own modeling companies, but this is going to be yet to be figured out how industry leverages models. Large pharma companies, they're building their own models. They're like, we don't want our IP to be leaked. We want our own model. We have so much data. We have so much knowledge. We want to build our own models, but we want to supplement it with the large language model like MedPalm or a general purpose model. So I think there is two ways to look at it. There would be always a general purpose model, which Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they're going to continue to build more and more for what Kerrie said, co-pilot purposes. Then there would be a very specific use case specific models for, let's say, drug discovery or patient healthcare management. I see at this point, those are the two directions the industry is running towards.
Very interesting. And we'll keep evolving. Who knows? Maybe, payers are going to look for insights across their many providers. I would want to do that if I were a payer. That might be a little pricey, but maybe there's like a hybrid cloud opportunity or a hybrid LLM opportunity. We haven't said that out loud before. Oh, there's a new thing, right? So some of those things I think could be evolving. And in a way, when we talk about like an open knowledge network, that NSF has us focusing on now, we're looking at how we can bring this, different pieces of information together to help researchers and hopefully citizens in the government as well. So there's a lot of new opportunity there. It's really exciting. Okay, here's another one, getting more to the human side. As a student in the field, it is easy to be motivated to work on advanced algorithms and impactful applications. I know, isn't it? It's so exciting. At the same time, it's hard to see what an early career professional job can be like. Obviously, not everyone is going to build a model that can find a cancer cure. What is realistic day in the life for a data scientist analyst that's like entering the field as a student? And Carsten, you probably coach these people every day where they're asking you, well, what can I really do? But, maybe you'll have an opinion.
Yeah, I think this is a really insightful question, actually, because indeed, we're not all doing all the shiny stuff all day long. So I think the one big one is data cleaning, right? So you'll be doing a lot of data cleaning, understanding the data before you get to do anything exciting. You just have to make sense of this pile of stuff that someone piled up in front of you, right? You might even have to find the pile of stuff first, right? So someone tells you, look, it's out there, right? And then you figure out that it's really partial and there's legacy systems and they're terrible and the colleague is retired now who actually knew what was going on. So there's a lot of detective work. There's a lot of joining records across systems that were never meant to be joined, right? Because nobody thought that anyone would go way back into legacy land anymore. So there's going to be a lot of those tasks. And then, of course, once we are getting to the what we often think about as data science, the project is actually really quick, right? So it's often 3/4, I would say, if not more, of the work is in getting all the data in one place, making it all well behaved, understanding weird biases or things in there that you can't make heads and tails of. And once you're at this point that it's features and labels, right, then you throw scikit-learn or torch or something at it, and then things happen really, really quickly just because these tools are so convenient and so powerful now, right? But getting there is the vast majority of the work.
Very good point. And when you mentioned making sure there's no bias, we teach this as part of the data science pipeline. When you first envision the project, you have to make sure you're not being biased on the way you're looking at it. Or as you say, this is the data we need, and you can't find any data for that neighborhood for some reason. Oh, that's okay. Well, maybe that's not okay. right? If that's where there's a high incidence of asthma and you can't find the data, then you're not getting the sensor information to realize that because of the traffic patterns, you're creating a worse problem in that underserved community. And so one of the reasons we like to say data science is a team sport is that it's beneficial that everybody comes in with their point of view to make sure there isn't bias. Like somebody might not have the point of view you have. They might not be sensitive to, people with that comorbidity or from that area or that look like this or whatever. And so that would be one of those hard questions that Carsten talks about asking. It might seem stupid to somebody else, but it's not. It's actually highlighting something that's not being considered. So I encourage each of you to be brave enough to actually share your opinion. All the students that work with us, we always say, if someone doesn't want to listen to you, you come find me. I'll make sure they listen to you, and find someone like that in your organization if you ever have that issue. I was like, a rocket scientist who wore pink, so sometimes people didn't want to listen to me. So if that ever happens to you, make sure that you find someone that will want to listen to you, because your voice really matters and your opinion really matters. Very good question. Great answer.
I'll just add what Carsten just said, right? I mean, that's a very important point. But a new line of professionalism is emerging, what we call is prompt engineering.
Mm-hmm.
It is, especially with Gen AI, I think it's a mixture of understanding data science and the business. And how do you really make sure that you're asking the right question to the model? And how do you create those boundaries of asking question? So prompt engineering is a very, very new, but I think it's a emerging, I don't know if it's a career, but it's an emerging,
Skill.
yes, emerging skill. And I don't know if it can turn into a career or not, but it is something who understands data sciences, but also understand the business, so that they can ask the right question to the model. And that is very critical, right? We are seeing that how do you fine tune the model is equally important to how do you ask the right question to the model to get the right answer. So the combination of two are going to be a new emerging knowledge set, I think, which students should really know about it and care about it.
Very well said. So we still have a few more questions and more coming in. Some of them are related to things we've said, a different nuance. A couple of them are a little bit different, so I'd like to highlight those. One is, where do you recommend finding internships or job opportunities in your fields? So I'll just mention that, Emily or Lauren, if you could put it in the chat, we have Career Central in the National Student Data Corps, and we have internships and fellowships and scholarships and job opportunities in there. So you can always go there. It's an open free resource. We also have in Career Central links to, other job search things. But do any of you have other advice for that on people finding internships or job opportunities as they enter this field?
Yeah, maybe one thing that I think is sometimes overlooked are the hospitals. So there's often on somewhat clunky, odd job websites on the hospital page, there are gigs for students who want to spend a summer coding for a cool project. And these projects often actually are those cool, let's try cure cancer or some smaller version of that. So it's really doing something that's very directly at the point of care, where it's really real data from the hospital, try to analyze that, whatnot. And I'm still to this day surprised how hard a time our clinical colleagues have finding students who want to spend the summer coding in that context, right? So it's often, I would say, pretty easy to get those gigs if you find them, right? But it's a bit of detective work looking at your local academic or not so academic medical centers, finding out what interns they're looking for a summer.
That's great advice. Very good. And another question, what advice would you give someone who's newly interested in data and doesn't know where to start? We get a lot of people like that. Yes, Joe.
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that I would recommend is looking at case studies of what people are actually doing with their data. So, like I mentioned HIMSS earlier, there's great case studies on there, or just, finding companies or organizations that are doing things you find interesting and seeing what kind of case studies they have. And I think getting that broader picture for what people are actually doing with their data and what these real world applications are is super useful. And then in terms of the technical side of things, if you want to like learn coding and like be doing the analysis, R and Python are of course excellent, great data analysis tools. And also make a plug for JavaScript and TypeScript if you want to make, visual representations of your data that are interactive and easy for people to access. That can be a really powerful language to use.
Very good point. I'll do a plug for something that we're planning on doing. We have these data science projects that students can do. And they can use, we have a Google Colab notebook, there's some Python coding, there's data visualization, and so you can learn any of those tools. We're also thinking of having a data visualization challenge that we create, maybe with our COVID InfoComm and student working group. So join us if you want. So we're going to keep trying to find ways like that, Joe, as you said, to like start, touching some of these tools before you have to go all the way through it. But then also learning the ones that you're excited about. You might not realize you love Python, or you might not realize how much you love it when you get a big pile of data like a pile of spaghetti and you love pulling it apart and then classifying the data and figuring out what data is not there and not giving up until you figure out, well, can they create synthetic data? I mean, data science, I feel like, is endless. You can keep going and looking at the data. New data becomes available. You create synthetic data. You find a better process to create synthetic data. So I think getting involved in this as a career opportunity is could be forever, which is very cool. And so it's almost 4:30 Eastern. Our panelists have been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all your wonderful insights. Emily and Lauren, thank you for running this. And do we have a last couple little slides to wrap it up?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so now we want to thank all our facilitators, panelists, and our outreach team from the National Student Data Corps. Emily, who is our NSDC program manager, Lauren, our operations communications manager at the Hub, our 4 panelists, Carsten, Kerrie, virtually, and then Joe and Manish, and our outreach team who continue to collaborate with us and help us find new ways to help the students and the learners of all ages around the world learn and use data science. On our last slide, these are ways you can connect with us. You can join our mailing list. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We have a Slack channel. You can see all this on YouTube. And we have Instagram and Twitter or X, depending on how you look at it and what day it is, information as well when we post there. And you can always email us at contact@anybigdatahub.org. So thank you again, everybody. We wish you so much luck in your data science journey. We're here for you. And we look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening and a great weekend.